When a man's hand travels lower, when his fingers reach for you with a kind of quiet purpose, what's really happening isn't what most people think. It's not just heat, it's not just lust. It's language. A conversation without sound, a question without words. And if you listen closely, it tells you everything about who he is, what he feels, and what he feels. Because, here's the truth. No one ever told you when a man touches you, there he isn't simply seeking pleasure. He's searching for connection. And that search says more about his heart than his desire. I used to think men did it out of routine, out of habit, like it was just another step before things went further. But I was wrong. The more I listened to what men actually feel in those moments, the more I realized something profound, that touch is their emotional translator. It's how they express tenderness when they can't find the words, how they test the space between control and surrender, and how they know whether you trust them enough to let go. That's what makes it powerful. Because beneath the surface of skin, what's really being touched is vulnerability. Think about it. In a world where men are told to stay strong, silent, and in control, intimacy becomes their one escape. Their fingers become their language. When he touches you gently, he's asking, "Can you feel me?" Not just physically, but emotionally. And when your body answers, when your breath softens, when your hand moves closer instead of away, he receives something he rarely gets anywhere else: permission to be human. But here's where it gets interesting. Most women misread that moment. They think it's just foreplay, a physical step before the main event. Yet, for many men, it's the opposite. It's the part that means the most. It's the moment where he feels trusted enough to explore, curious enough to learn, and capable enough to create something that isn't mechanical but meaningful. That's why, when a man slows down, when he traces the edges of your body, like he's reading a story, he's not just learning what turns you on. He's learning what opens you up. Every reaction you give him, the way your breath catches, the way your eyes close, the subtle shift of your hips tells him something. It tells him if you're with him, if you're present, if he's allowed to go deeper. And that feedback doesn't just turn him on, it reassures him, it gives him confidence. Because men crave confirmation, not applause. They want to know they're doing something right, not because they're performers, but because they're partners. Now, here's a thought that might surprise you. For a man, using his fingers is often the only moment where he feels both powerful and safe. Power because he's guiding you toward pleasure. Safety because he's doing it through trust, not dominance. And that balance between control and care is the sweet spot where real intimacy begins. It's the space where his confidence stops being ego and starts becoming empathy. I've seen this pattern play out again and again. Men who seem closed off emotionally can become completely present in that moment of touch. The noise in their mind stops. The pressure to perform disappears. All that's left is attention, observation, a quiet determination to understand you. That's what makes this act so much deeper than it looks. It's not about taking something, it's about earning something. The right to be let in. And here's the irony. What looks like a man in control is often a man surrendering. Surrendering to curiosity, to emotion, to the hope that you'll meet him halfway. Because, deep down, what he really wants isn't mastery, it's connection. When you lean into his touch instead of tensing up, when you trust him enough to be unguarded, you're answering that silent question he's been asking all along. Am I safe with you, too? That's what most women never see. They notice the action, but not the intention. They feel the sensation, but not the meaning. Yet, when you start to understand that every touch has a message, the whole experience changes. You stop guessing his motives, you start feeling his emotions. You realize that under that calm exterior, under the practiced movements, there's a man quietly hoping to be understood, to be felt, to be allowed in. And maybe that's the part no one talks about. Maybe that's why this moment matters so much to him. Because for a few seconds, his hands can say what his voice can't. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear it not in words, but in rhythm, in patience, in the way he learns your responses, like a song he never wants to forget. So before we dive deeper into what's really going on in his mind when he touches you that way, ask yourself this. What if it's not just about desire? What if it's his way of saying something he's never said out loud? I want to understand you. When his fingers find you, it's not a move he learned. It's an instinct he's following. What's happening in that moment is part curiosity, part courage, and part confession. He's not just touching you, he's reading you. Every breath you take becomes a line of text. Every shift in your rhythm becomes punctuation. To him, your body is a story written in real time, and he's trying to understand the plot. For most men, this is one of the few moments when their focus narrows completely. No distractions, no pressure to speak, just silence and sensation. It's a kind of meditation disguised as desire. What he's really doing is listening with his hands instead of his ears. Men spend most of their lives being told to perform, to fix, to lead, to know the answers. But here, in this space, he's not performing anything. He's exploring. There's no scoreboard, no competition, no finish line, just presence. The more you respond, the more he learns. Not about pleasure alone, but about trust. That's the currency of intimacy for him. When you allow him that closeness, you're giving him something far more valuable than access. You're giving him responsibility. And for a man who truly cares, that responsibility makes him come alive. There's a common myth that men chase control. But the truth is, in that moment, control is the last thing on his mind. He's not thinking about power, he's thinking about permission. Permission to slow down, to care, to connect. His fingers are not demanding, they're asking. And when you answer, when you show through your breath and movement that you're there with him, it tells him he's been accepted. That acceptance is what ignites him. Not dominance, but belonging. The beauty of this kind of touch is in its paradox. It looks physical, but it's emotional. It looks simple, but it's layered. On one level, he's curious about what makes you react. On another, he's quietly learning how to express empathy without speaking. Most men aren't taught emotional language, but they learn it through feedback. When you respond naturally, when you let your body say yes instead of your mouth, he receives the message. You make me feel safe enough to open. That's the moment he realizes he can be gentle without losing strength. There's also an invisible exchange happening, validation flowing both ways. You feel desired, he feels capable, you feel understood, he feels trusted. That feedback loop is what keeps the energy alive. He's not thinking about climax. He's thinking about connection. He's searching for that delicate balance between guiding and following, leading and listening. And that balance, once he finds it, becomes addictive. Because it's not just about your body responding, it's about your energy syncing with his. If you could step inside his mind during that moment, you'd be surprised at how quiet it is. He's not planning his next move. He's not calculating pleasure. He's focused on the rhythm of your breathing, the warmth of your skin, the shift between your restraint and release. Every little change in you becomes a signal to him. It's not technical, it's emotional radar. And when he feels that he's tuned in, when he senses that his attention is matching your response, it's one of the few times he feels completely competent without trying to be perfect. That sense of, I'm doing something right, feeds a man more deeply than praise ever could. Because this kind of affirmation doesn't come in words. It comes in instinctive reaction. It's raw, it's honest. It can't be faked. And men can feel the difference. The body never lies. When your body tells him he's enough, that's when his confidence turns into care. That's when he softens. That's when the pressure fades. And what remains is something rare. Presence without pretense. But there's something else happening beneath that calm. Vulnerability, even if he doesn't show it, that touch carries risk. Because for a man offering affection in such an intimate way is a kind of emotional exposure. It's saying, I hope you accept me in this form. Focused, flawed, but real. When you respond with openness instead of resistance, you're not only allowing pleasure, you're protecting that vulnerability. You're telling him he's safe to stay soft. And when a man feels safe like that, everything changes. He becomes more attentive, more affectionate outside the bedroom, more confident in expressing care. It's not about sex anymore. It's about safety, his and yours. Because that small act teaches him something. Larger connection doesn't come from dominance. It comes from permission. The permission to be human, to feel, to explore without fear. Most women never see this side of man because society hides it well. But if you look closer, you'll see it in his silence, in his patience, in the way his fingers pause to check your breathing before moving again. That pause is not hesitation, it's respect. It's his way of asking, am I still welcome? And when the answer is yes, that's when he gives more, not to impress you, but to honor you. So the next time his hand lingers, remember, it's not just an act of touch, it's an act of trust. He's not only exploring you, he's revealing himself in the only way he knows how. And the question that lingers, the one he never says aloud, is simple but profound. If I show you this side of me, will you still let me stay? Trust. It's the invisible force that decides whether a touch feels electric or empty. When a man's fingers trace your body, trust becomes the difference between pleasure and pressure. Without it, everything feels mechanical. With it, every movement becomes meaning. For a man, that moment of closeness isn't about access, it's about acceptance. He's silently asking, do you feel safe with me? And your body, more than your words, gives him the answer. When you let him touch you with openness instead of tension, you're doing something he'll never forget. You're allowing him to feel useful, reliable, wanted. That combination hits deeper than desire ever could. Men rarely talk about it, but emotional safety matters to them as much as it does to women. They just find it in different places. Women often feel it through words, affection, reassurance. Men feel it through reaction, through the quiet confirmation that their effort makes a difference. When your body responds naturally, when you don't hide or pretend, it tells him that he's enough. And for someone taught all his life that being enough means being strong, this is revolutionary, because here he doesn't have to prove anything. He just has to be attentive. This is why that simple act becomes so powerful. It rewires what masculinity means for him. For once, power isn't about control. It's about connection. Pleasure isn't about domination. It's about dialogue. He's learning that tenderness doesn't make him weak. It makes him trusted. And that shift, subtle as it is, changes everything about how he shows up for you outside of that moment. He becomes more patient, more present, more protective, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude, because you gave him the chance to be both strong and soft at the same time. But let's go deeper. That moment also reflects how much you trust yourself. When you allow someone to explore your vulnerability, you're telling yourself that you deserve to be understood. You're reclaiming intimacy as something mutual, not something taken. The irony is that when a woman feels safe enough to surrender, she becomes even more powerful because her openness guides him, teaches him, shows him what presence really means. That's the unspoken rhythm of true connection. Each person leading by listening. Men feel that rhythm deeply. They might not articulate it, but they sense when energy shifts. When your breath changes or your muscles soften, it tells him, "I trust you." That signal makes him want to honor that trust even more. Suddenly, his movements slow. His focus sharpens. His intent becomes deliberate. What looks like pleasure is actually reverence, because now he's not just touching your body. He's protecting the trust you gave him. That's why many men remember these moments far longer than they admit. They remember the silence, the breathing, the warmth. Not because it was wild, but because it was real. There's also something else happening, something rarely noticed. Every time he's gentle, every time he chooses patience over pressure, he's retraining his own instincts. The world teaches him to chase results, to rush, to conquer. But in that intimate silence, he's learning a new rhythm, to wait, to listen, to adapt. That's the blueprint of emotional maturity, built not in conversations, but in these moments of wordless understanding. It's where he discovers that real masculinity isn't about taking control. It's about earning trust. This is why physical closeness becomes emotional fuel for him. When he senses that you're relaxed, when he feels your body trust his timing, it gives him confidence outside of intimacy too. He walks differently. He speaks differently because somewhere deep inside he carries the memory of being accepted fully. That experience becomes proof that gentleness works, that presence matters more than performance. And once a man internalizes that truth, it changes how he loves. But trust isn't automatic. It's built through attention. The way his fingers slow down when you need a pause, the way you guide his hand instead of pulling away. Those small cues are the architecture of connection. They say, "I see you trying, and I trust you to keep learning." For him, that's gold. It means he's not just touching, he's communicating. And communication is what transforms ordinary intimacy into emotional depth. Most people underestimate the emotional intelligence it takes for a man to truly listen through touch, to notice not just reactions, but resistance, to sense when to continue and when to stop. When he does it right, he's not just being attentive, he's being empathetic. And empathy is the rarest kind of strength. It tells you everything about his character. It shows you that for him, your comfort isn't an obstacle to pleasure. It's the path to it. So, when you feel his hand move with patience, when he adjusts to your rhythm without being told, realize what's really happening. He's not improvising. He's listening. He's building trust in real time. And that trust doesn't end when the moment does. It lingers, weaving itself into how you talk, how you look at each other, how safe you both feel to be yourselves. That's the quiet magic of it all. Because, at the end of the day, what he's truly asking isn't, "Do you want me?" It's, "Can we be this honest with each other?" And the answer to that question, the way your body responds, the way your energy softens, creates the blueprint for every kind of intimacy that follows. Every connection leaves an imprint. And for a man, the moments when touch turns into understanding become the ones that stay longest. When his fingers explore you slowly, it's not simply an act of pleasure. It's an act of learning. He's memorizing responses, decoding rhythms, capturing emotional cues he can't name, but can feel. That's why he remembers not the movement itself, but the atmosphere, the sound of your breath, the pause before your body leans into his, the calm that replaces hesitation. Those details form a private language that both of you speak without realizing it. In that language, every sigh means I trust you. Every stillness means I'm listening. Every soft exhale means I'm here, too. That's what makes it unforgettable. Men don't often articulate emotions in words, but they store them in sensations. The warmth of your skin, the pace of your breathing, the gentleness of your response, they become reference points in his emotional memory. Later, when he holds your hand or looks at you across a room, his mind goes back there unconsciously. To him, that moment is proof that intimacy isn't just physical contact, it's evidence of mutual faith. It tells him, I was allowed in and I didn't break anything fragile. That memory reinforces his desire to protect, to nurture, to stay. Not because he's bound by duty, but because he's been emotionally marked by trust. And this is what most people miss. That touch, when done with attention and respect, rewires both partners. It teaches your body to relax into safety and teaches his to listen beyond words. Each time this happens, both of you grow quieter inside, less guarded, more attuned. The world outside fades. And in that silence, real connection starts to take shape. It's not the kind of connection born from excitement. It's the kind that builds longevity. The kind that makes eye contact feel heavier, that makes small gestures carry meaning. There's also an element of anticipation that makes this language addictive. Men are often told that pleasure is about climax, but in truth, what grips them is the build-up. The waiting, the tension, the reading of signals that only come when you're fully present. When he touches you like that, he's savoring the moment before certainty. That space between knowing and wondering fuels his focus. It's the same reason an artist hesitates before a final brushstroke, because completion means the end, but exploration means discovery. That's why he slows down. That's why he listens harder. He's not delaying the inevitable. He's cherishing the unknown. For many men, that anticipation becomes the emotional anchor that keeps them connected long after the moment ends. It's not about power. It's about partnership. It's about finding a rhythm that feels like conversation, where both of you speak and respond in ways that words could never reach. When that balance happens, everything else, ego, pressure, expectation, disappears. What remains is awareness, and awareness is what intimacy truly is. The understanding that pleasure means nothing without presence. As strange as it sounds, this simple act becomes his mirror. Through your reactions, he sees his own depth. He realizes he can be patient, he can be gentle, he can be enough. And that realization changes him. It follows him into other parts of life. How he listens, how he leads, how he loves. That's the unseen ripple of trust. It doesn't end in the moment. It expands beyond it. When he's learned to read you with his hands, he starts to read the world differently, with more care, more empathy, more precision. The moment also teaches something crucial about desire. It's not about taking, it's about understanding. When you let him explore, and when he does it with intention instead of assumption, desire becomes communication. You're not performing for each other. You're revealing to each other. The most powerful chemistry isn't built on friction. It's built on recognition. The kind that says, I see who you are, when you stop pretending. And that's why this experience stays with him. It's not the act he replays in his mind. It's the emotion attached to it. The quiet pride of being trusted. The invisible relief of being accepted. For men, that memory is a compass. It reminds them that real connection doesn't come from effort or technique. It comes from attention. It's how they measure whether what they have is real. So when his hand moves slowly, when he lingers instead of rushing, understand that he's not just lost in the moment. He's trying to make it last. He's trying to memorize the feeling of being allowed to care, to please, to connect without pretense. Because, deep down, what he's seeking isn't just pleasure. It's proof that vulnerability can feel like strength. And that proof, once he's felt it, becomes impossible to forget. So the next time it happens, don't think of it as a routine. Think of it as a dialogue, a language built in silence, spoken through trust. Because that's the truth most never see. When a man touches you like that, he's not just exploring your body. He's searching for the moment where both of you finally stop performing and start feeling. And that's where the real story begins.